First episode opens outside Havenhurst University in Abbotsville, Maine. Reacher drives up to the vinyl vault in a blue van. He grabs a milk crate of vinyl records from the back. Inside, the proprietor and a friend are debating the best song on the subject of water. Reacher disagrees with Surfin' Safari because it's a ripoff of Chuck Berry's Sweet Little 16, impressing the store's owner. He takes a look at the records Reacher's looking to sell and is skeptical they'll move. Outside the store, a tan pickup revs its engine. Looking out the window, Reacher sees the driver staring intently at a black sedan parked further up the street. A young man leaves the Faculty of Arts building and gets into the sedan. Reacher watches as the truck's driver accelerates and rams the sedan, pushing it sideways until it smashes into a light pole. The airbag deploys, knocking out the sedan's driver. The truck's driver gets out, carrying a weapon. He breaks the sedan's back window and drags the cowering young man out. Reacher comes out of the music shop with his gun in hand. The kidnapper sprays the street with bullets. As he tries to make a getaway, Reacher steps out in front of the truck, firing on the tires. The truck veers into a line of parked cars. The kidnapper gets out to fire at Reacher, but Reacher shoots him in the chest. Reacher grabs the young man from the passenger side, promising he's not going to hurt him. They get into the blue van. A man in a suit yells out at them, and Reacher instinctively shoots him in the chest. He falls to the ground, revealing a police badge in his hand. The young man states, "You shot a cop." Reacher looks shocked and says he didn't know. He thought the man was pulling a gun. With urgency, he shuts the passenger door and insists they gotta go. On their way out of town, Reacher asks the young man why people are trying to kidnap him. A campus police car with sirens blaring pursues them. He evades them, but tells the young man he needs to find a new ride. They pull in behind a factory. Reacher hotwires a car in the parking lot and tells the young man to call for a ride. The young man begs him to take him with him, or to take him home to his wealthy father. He tells Reacher that his father will help him to repay him for preventing the kidnapping attempt. He admits this isn't the first time someone's tried to kidnap him. 5 years ago, he was kidnapped. The kidnappers cut off his ear. Reacher asks what his father does that he'd be the target of kidnappers twice. The young man says his father just imports rugs. However, there's generational wealth. The young man introduces himself as Richard Beck. Reacher tells him to get in. They drive to a remote seaside mansion. A very big man guards the gate. Richard addresses him as Polly and says they've called ahead to his dad. Polly insists Reacher get out of the car. In the car, Reacher asks if Polly's always that rude. Richard states that he does whatever he wants. Reaching the house, Richard takes Reacher to the kitchen, where the housekeeper offers to make him a plate. A man walks through and says Reacher doesn't have time to eat. Richard's father wants to see him immediately and alone. He walks out carrying a plate of food, and Richard tells Reacher the man is Chapman Duke, head of security. Reacher finds Richard's father, Zachary Beck, in his study. He offers Reacher a drink. Reacher doesn't take it. He offers Reacher a seat. Reacher doesn't sit. Beck asks him for details about the kidnapping attempt. Reacher tells him the bodyguard wasn't any good at his job, not noticing a pickup that out of place in a college town. Beck asks how he noticed. Reacher reveals he was military police in the Army. Since then, he wanders, picking up extra cash wherever he can. He tells Beck that he just needs a place to lie low until the heat from killing that police officer lessens, and he can hit the road again. Beck points out that sheltering him is a big favor to ask, but he says he'll think it over. He calls out for Duke to escort Reacher back to the kitchen for a bite to eat. Reacher picks up the scotch glass on Beck's desk by the tips of his fingers. Putting it down, he tells Beck he gripped it firmly, so they'll have a clean set of prints to run. Beck nods his acknowledgement. Duke examines Reacher closely as they walk to the hallway. They pass Richard's room, where he's busy painting. Reacher goes to check on him and takes a look at the many paintings around the room. He asks where Richard's mother is. Richard tells him she died when he was 4. Duke receives a text and tells Reacher that Beck wants to see him. Instead of going back to the office, Duke takes him to the carriage house where Beck and Polly are waiting. Beck informs him his escape made the news, then reviews the intel they have from running his prints. Polly isn't impressed with his military record. Duke reveals Polly was in the army, too, and doesn't like officers. Beck offers Reacher a job. But first, he has to play Russian roulette with his revolver. Reacher protests that this isn't standard hiring practices. With no other choice, Reacher loads the bullet, puts the gun to his temple, and pulls the trigger. Beck thinks that it's done, but Reacher spins the barrel 3 more times, putting the gun to his temple and pulling the trigger after each spin. Before the 5th pull, Beck grabs the gun from him. Beck welcomes him to the team and leaves with Polly. Reacher puts his hand out for Duke to return his revolver, but Duke refuses, calling him crazy. When Reacher claims to know that the bullet was a blank, Duke aims the gun at the cans of oil on the counter and pulls the trigger until it fires the bullet, putting a hole in a can. Reacher asks what they would have done if he'd killed himself. Duke says the same as they did with the last guy and leaves. Reacher notices the oil is draining through the floorboards before Duke yells at him to get moving. Duke shows him to his room and informs him that he'll be locked in until morning because he doesn't trust Reacher. After sweeping the room for listening devices, Reacher pulls a phone out of the heel of his shoe and makes a call. "I'm in," he tells the person on the other end. Flashback to days earlier. While having a coffee outside a cafe, Reacher notices a teen casing a woman's purse. He interjects and gives the kid $100 and a stern talking to. As they're wrapping up, Reacher spots an Asian man across the street and gets very serious. The man gets into a car and drives away. Reacher memorizes the license plate number and then demands the kid's phone. He calls the 110th Special Investigators and talks to Warrant Officer Powell. He gets Powell to run the plates, but the website is down. Since he's using a borrowed phone, he gives Powell the information on where he's staying, the Yorkie Motel. Later, at the motel, federal agents come banging on Reacher's door. Rather than opening the door, he escapes out the bathroom window. Agent Susan Duffy waits for him around the corner. They sit down by the pool to talk. The agents that banged on the door, Villanueva and Elliott, join them. Duffy and her DEA team explain that they found out where he was staying from Powell after they threatened him with obstructing a federal investigation. They believe that a rug import business called Bizarre Bazaar is a cover for a drug smuggling operation. When Reacher had Powell run the license plate, it alerted them as that car brought the Bizarre Bazaar proprietor to a meeting with a drug kingpin from L.A. Elliott shows him pictures of Zachary Beck and Polly meeting with a third man. Reacher doesn't recognize any of them. Duffy concludes he saw someone he knew get into the car that he wants to track down now. Reacher refuses to help them or answer questions until they check medical records around Lytton, Virginia, on or just after March 13, 2012. He wants to know if there's record of an Asian American man in his 40s with injuries consistent with a small caliber gunshot wound to the head, a high fall, and drowning. That night, Reacher's standing in his motel room in his underwear when the phone rings. The next morning, the team informs Reacher that his guy was found by a beachcomber. The doctors believe the freezing cold water saved him. He recovered over the next 6 months, but claimed amnesia. Elliott hands Reacher a file that includes a photo of the man in recovery. Duffy jumps on Reacher's expression on seeing the photo and demands to know what he knows. Reacher informs her the man is Lieutenant Colonel Francis Xavier Quinn, military intelligence. He was selling military secrets to hostile nations. Duffy deduces that Reacher saw Quinn in Beck's car and wants to find him. She invites him for a walk. Alone together, she explains that she screwed up on the case of the LA drug dealer because they messed up the warrant. The DEA pulled them off the case, but she's pursuing it off the books. She planted a confidential informant, Teresa Daniel, in Beck's household, and she went missing a week ago. Duffy shows him a picture of Teresa wearing big hoop earrings. She wants him to infiltrate Beck's organization and find Teresa. Reacher tells her that if Teresa was taken by Quinn's people, she is probably already dead. He says that Quinn is the single worst person he's ever known. Duffy outlines her plan to get Reacher into Beck's stronghold, staging a kidnapping attempt on Richard Beck. In the motel room, they collaborate on the details. Rather than killing the bodyguard, Reacher suggests they'll have to hold him indefinitely. The DEA agents hesitate at that. Elliot volunteers to play the kidnapper. Duffy tries to talk him out of it, but he insists because he was the one that screwed up the warrant. To prevent Richard from going to the cops, Reacher says he needs to kill a cop. Furthermore, to sell the fight, he plans to mix live ammo in with the blanks. He scrapes a notch into the bullet chamber of his revolver so he'll always know where the blanks start. Villanueva sets him up with the records and a way to steal and hotwire the second vehicle. By the motel pool, Reacher runs through the last few problems he sees in the plan. Duffy provides him with the shoes with a pocket heel and the phone. In the present day, he checks in with Duffy, describing the job interview and the Russian roulette, reminding her that he'd marked a chamber earlier. By loading the single bullet in that chamber, he always knew where it was. Duffy debriefs him on the bodyguard tied up in the other room of the cabin where they're holed up. Reacher tells her Duke took a plate of food outside, and he believes there's a hidden cellar under the carriage house. That might be where they're hiding Teresa. He plans to investigate in the middle of the night. At 3 a.m., he climbs out his window, over the rooftop, and down the side of the house. In the hidden cellar, he finds a half-eaten plate of food and a hoop earring. He calls Duffy and lets her know Teresa was there. Second episode opens in the cellar under Beck's carriage house. Reacher reports to Duffy that Teresa was probably moved recently. The signs in the cellar are that she's alive and they were feeding her before moving her. He makes it clear to Duffy that the bad guys keeping Teresa alive and healthy doesn't bode well. Hanging up with Duffy, he heads back to his room, hiding behind some bushes, when he spots some of Beck's men meeting. At the DEA team's cabin, the captive bodyguard, John Cooper, struggles against the bonds tying him to his chair. When he complains he can't sleep sitting up, Agent Elliot has no sympathy for him. Duffy bursts in and hits Cooper across the face with a book, demanding he tell her what Beck's doing with Teresa. He denies knowing anything. She attacks him again just as Villanueva arrives. He pulls her off Cooper and orders her outside to cool down. Cooper can't resist adding his agreement, and she throws the book across the room, hitting him in the face. Outside the cabin, Villanueva and Elliot advise Duffy to stay calm. She agrees and sends Elliot back in to watch Cooper. Left alone together, Villanueva tells her she should take it easy on Elliot. She bemoans their team of misfits and their chances of success. At Beck's estate, Reacher watches Duke lead a new guy into the house before racing to get back to his room. Duke unlocks the door to Reacher's bedroom and sees an empty bed and an open window. He's about to run out to look for him when the toilet in the ensuite flushes, and Reacher comes out in his underwear. He orders Reacher to get dressed. They've got a job for him. Reacher questions the timing. Duke tells him they found the pickup the kidnapper used when he tried to grab Richard. It's in a state evidence lot, and the guy Duke brought to the house, Angel Doll, is going to take Reacher there to identify the truck. Getting dressed in the bathroom, Reacher calls Duffy to report he's going to the impound lot to identify the pickup. When she says all the vehicles from the kidnapping were taken to the same lot, he points out that the Audi the bodyguard Cooper supposedly died in will be there. Beck thinks the bodyguard died by grenade. If they find his car without the blood and brain matter splattered on the interior, the kidnapping story starts to fall apart. Duffy says she'll get there first, but he needs to buy her time. On the way to the lot, Angel chats up Reacher, bragging about his connections and telling him he used to be in the army too, until he was kicked out. He's excited to find out who the plates on the pickup truck back to. He figures this is the move that'll get him promoted up the chain. Reacher comments it's interesting that Beck promotes internally. Angel laughs and asks why he'd care what Beck thinks. Reacher asks who they actually work for. Angel just laughs again and tells him he has a lot to learn. At the impound lot, Duffy signs in with the night duty officer to access the vehicles. Villanueva waits outside. Duffy finds the Audi, but it's pinned into its space, so she can't get it out until she moves the wreck, blocking it in. To stall for time, Reacher's made Angel stop at a gas station. Inside, Reacher stands still, holding a pot of coffee, watching the clock tick by. Angel comes in to see what's taking so long, and Reacher pours a large cup, and they head out to the car. In the lot, Duffy's having trouble pushing the wreck out of the way. Back on the road, Reacher asks Angel how he plans to access the lot. Angel says he'll offer the night duty officer $500, and if that doesn't work, he has a gun as backup. They drive into the parking lot. Villanueva alerts Duffy they've arrived. Angel tries his first plan with the night duty officer, Edmonds. It's not working, and Angel reaches for his gun. Reacher punches Edmonds out, telling Angel he's not looking to kill a second cop this week. Angel rolls his eyes, hits the access button, and they head into the evidence lot. Inside, Reacher sees the Audi. At the other end of the lot, Angel finds the pickup. Reacher confirms that's the truck that rammed the bodyguard's car. Angel gets busy photographing the plates. Reacher tries to get them out before Angel Doll notices the Audi, but he spots it as they're leaving. Walking over, he examines the interior, noting it certainly doesn't look like someone got blown up in it. Reacher spots Duffy's arm sticking out from under the car, reaching for a screwdriver. He kicks the screwdriver to her and draws Angel's attention to the plates on the car. They're Delaware plates, not Maine ones. Angel realizes it can't be part of Beck's fleet, but can't get over how it's the same make and model with damage as described from the kidnapping attempt. Reacher says the one the bodyguard got blown up in must be somewhere sealed up to preserve DNA evidence. Angel Doll considers that for a moment and seems to accept the ex-military police opinion. They head out, leaving a relieved Duffy hiding under the Audi. Arriving at Beck's at dawn, Reacher just wants to go back to bed. Angel crows about his impending promotion, listing the tasks he still has to do, but certain he's moving on up. Reacher walks away. Upstairs, there's a light on in his room. He approaches slowly and startles the maid Annette as she exits the room. Left alone, Reacher lies down and sighs. A minute later, Beck knocks on his door. He tells Reacher to go down to the gym to see Duke and Polly in the gym. On his way downstairs, Beck stops in to see Richard. He wakes him up gently to promise him it won't happen again. Richard isn't reassured, pointing out it has happened again already. If the second kidnapping hadn't been thwarted, he'd be gone, probably having bits cut off him and mailed to Beck. He tells his father he thinks about his abduction every time he looks in the mirror. In the gym, Reacher asks what the job is. Duke asks if he can drive a truck and leaves to see if the shipment is ready. Polly's bench pressing and asks how much he can lift. Reacher refuses to compete with weights and says a real test of strength is Bavarian arm wrestling. Polly's never heard of it. Reacher instructs him on how to sit, then grabs his fist, pulling down as Polly curls it toward himself. As Polly taunts him, Reacher lets go, causing Polly to punch himself in the head. Polly jumps up, ready to fight, but Duke interrupts. He takes Reacher to a big rig, telling him there's a GPS in it. It'll direct Reacher to New London, Connecticut. He's got 6 hours to get there. At the cabin, Cooper complains that they put peppers in the wrap they're feeding him. Duffy goes outside to take Reacher's call. He tells her he's driving a truck to New London. If they meet up at a rest stop, they can open the back and find out what he's transporting. They arrange to meet outside Waterville. Reacher calls Frances Neagley in Chicago next. He asks her to run Polly, Duke, and Angel Doll's names through the system. When she says she'll call him with the info, he says he can't have the phone ring when others are around. She offers to come out to help, but he says he can't have anyone else involved. When she presses him on who he's up against, he hangs up on her. Duffy and Villanueva meet Reacher at the rest stop. While Villanueva unlocks the truck, Reacher gives Duffy the earring he found in the cellar. She identifies it as Teresa's. A New Haven police car pulls up. Duffy introduces her friend, Officer Grunert, a K-9 trainer for the New Haven Police Department. He introduces his drug sniffer dog, Pfizer. Pfizer sweeps the truck, and it's clean of drugs and bodies. Reacher decides the truck delivery is a loyalty test. He gives Villanueva the GPS to make it look like he's back en route by driving towards New London. They'll meet up at another rest stop after Reacher's resoldered the lock. As they're driving to the meeting point, Duffy receives intel that Beck's shipments get searched 10 times less than other importers. Reacher deduces he's paying off someone in customs. Reacher shares what Angel Doll said about Beck not being the boss. Duffy wonders if the boss is Quinn. Reacher feels like they're getting close. Duffy asks about how Reacher knows what she's feeling regarding the possibility of Teresa being dead. He tells her about a protege he worked with once. When Duffy asks what Quinn did to her, Reacher's unable to answer. They meet Villanueva and get the GPS back. Duffy gets out and bids Reacher goodbye. Reacher pulls into the address in New London, where a group of men are waiting. He hands over the keys, and they give him another set, point to an empty Bazaar truck, and tell him to head back to the warehouse. Back at the warehouse, Angel Doll is waiting. He's been tracking Reacher's drive all day. Reacher asks where Duke is, as he's supposed to give him a ride back to the house. Angel Doll says Duke's on his way, but he wants to talk to Reacher alone. He says that when he was dumping the minivan, Reacher hotwired. He looked closer at the steering column and realized Reacher didn't use a screwdriver, and there were no insulation bits left from stripping the wires. Duke honks the horn outside. Angel Doll decides that Reacher must be working with the cops, and he plans to go outside and tell Duke. As he walks by Reacher, Reacher slams his head onto a memo spike on a nearby desk, instantly killing him. Rolling his eyes at the mess, Reacher drags Angel Doll back to his desk and breaks his bones to make him fit under the desk before rushing out to Duke, who is laying on the horn. When Duke asks what the holdup is, Reacher responds, "Angel talks too much." Third episode opens as Duke drives Reacher back to Beck's mansion. He asks what Angel Doll said to Reacher at the warehouse. Angel had told Duke he had news to share. Reacher denies hearing anything important from Angel. Duke says that Angel called Beck directly. Duke drops Reacher off at the house, saying he's got things to do while Reacher's off the clock, finally. Reacher cleans Angel's blood from his hands in the kitchen. Annette gives him an industrial cream cleanser she says Rusty, the mechanic, uses to get his hands clean. As Reacher serves himself some food, he asks Annette and the housekeeper Agnes about why Beck would keep a mechanic around when his fleet is new. Annette says she doesn't ask questions. She comments about the upcoming 50th birthday party for Beck. Duke comes in and puts away Reacher's dishes, saying Beck has questions about a voicemail Angel left. Angel's not answering his phone, and Duke tells Reacher to get a move on. Unable to arm himself with a kitchen knife, Reacher follows slowly. In his office, Beck tells Reacher and Duke that Angel left a message saying the plates on the pickup traced back to a group they've done business with before. However, Reacher's description of the would-be kidnapper doesn't match anyone working with the group. Beck accuses Reacher of being an unreliable witness. Reacher offers the possibility that the rival group recruited new members. He presses Beck to share more information about the rival group so he can track them down before they strike again. Beck tells him to mind his own business and sends him to his room. In his room, he reaches out to Neagley using the phone in his boot heel. She tells him that while in the military, Polly punched his captain's eye out and then tore a CO's finger off. Angel made friends with Polly in the brig. He was there for sexual assault. Duke used to be a cop. Neagley offers again to back him up. He turns it down, stating that his target's involvement means keeping Neagley out. When he says the target is someone he thought he'd killed years ago, she immediately guesses Quinn. She wants to know where he is. He tells her his phone isn't traceable and hangs up. Next, he calls Duffy, asking her to drop a car for him nearby after midnight with a towel and a change of clothes inside. He tells her that he needs to get back into the warehouse and clean up the scene. Until then, he naps. At midnight, he heads to the water and strips down to his underwear. He dives into the rough waters and swims down the coast. On a nearby road, Duffy waits with the car, reporting via text to Villanueva that Reacher hasn't shown up yet. Just then, a figure emerges from the woods and walks towards her. Her eyes widen when she realizes it's a soaking wet and nearly naked Reacher. He tells her she doesn't need to be there. She tells him that she wants to search Bazaar for Teresa and hands him the bag of clothes. He strips out of his wet underwear in front of her and changes. Arching an eyebrow at him, she gets into the driver's side of the car. On the way to the warehouse, he gives her a rundown on Beck and tells her they need to convince Beck that the kidnappers who targeted Richard aren't going to keep coming. She asks what Quinn did to him to fuel this need to find him. Reacher says Quinn didn't do anything to him. Reacher recalls a night and a wooden barn. There are wind chimes and a creaking door. In the car, he tells Duffy her name was Sergeant First Class Dominique Cole, and they were friends. They arrive at the warehouse and park in the back. Duffy scales the fence and climbs over the razor wire. Reacher follows. Inside, he introduces her to Angel Doll's corpse. Duffy takes it in stride, grabs Angel's laptop, and uses his fingerprint to log in. They search the warehouse for Teresa, but come up empty. Duffy is frustrated while Reacher remains calm, reminding her they've eliminated the warehouse as a location. Looking out the window, he notices several shipping containers left out near the rails. They load Angel into the trunk of one of Beck's Audis and drive it into container 13. Reacher takes Angel's gun, and they shut the doors of the container and lock it. Back in the office, they're cleaning the blood when a truck drives up. Reacher sees Bellinger and Sklar get out. Knowing the goons will shoot them on sight, Duffy and Reacher hide and ambush them with a crowbar and a bat. They kill the men and hide the bodies in container 14. Duffy drives Reacher back to the road where she met up with him. He bags Angel's gun and strips down to underwear again in preparation for swimming back to Beck's. She turns her back, but has to look at him again when he returns the clothes to her. They say goodnight. He swims back with the bag containing Angel's gun. Finding his hidden clothes, he towels off, gets dressed, and returns to the house, hiding Angel's gun among the rocks. In the morning, Beck is freaking out because 2 of their drivers are missing. When Reacher offers to do the job, Beck tells him to take Richard into town for some shopping. As he leaves the estate with Richard, Reacher accelerates the car as they pass the gatehouse, forcing Polly to jump out of the way. Richard warns him he should mess with Polly because he's a psycho. Reacher asks why his father lets a psycho live at his house. Richard says it's not his dad's call. Julius McCabe calls the shots. Richard says McCabe is Beck's boss. He says he's way worse than Polly. Reacher presses him for information on Beck and McCabe's business, but Richard sticks with the story that Bazaar Bazaar just sells rugs. When they arrive in town, Richard heads for a toy store. He's buying a vintage toy gun for his father's birthday gift. While he's conducting his transaction with the store owner, Reacher looks for a washroom. Once alone, he calls Duffy to tell her a big order's coming in, and Beck's sweating. Duffy decides to take Villanueva down to the docks so they can see it arrive. Reacher says all the answers are only known by the top level of the organization. He tells Duffy that Julius McCabe is Beck's boss. To get into the inner circle, Reacher needs a promotion to Duke's position. Duke has to go. Since Duffy has Angel's laptop, he has her send Beck the address of an agency safe house with a message from Angel that this is where the group who owned the pickup is hiding out. Afterward, she grabs Villanueva, leaving Elliot to watch Cooper. In town, Richard leaves the store with his shopping bag. He runs into 3 townies he used to go to high school with. The lead townie takes his bag and stomps on it, breaking the toy gun inside. Reacher arrives and tells them to leave Richard alone. They don't, and Reacher fights the trio, leaving them on the ground. At the shipping yards, Duffy and Villanueva spot Beck's trucks leaving with cargo from Slip 7. Duffy reviews the manifest on Angel's laptop, letting it slip to Villanueva that Reacher killed Angel. They follow the trucks. Back in town, Reacher holds the 2 parts of the toy gun together. Richard comes out of an ice cream parlor with 2 cones. Reacher says some epoxy should fix the toy. Richard hands him one of the cones of lavender-infused ice cream. Reacher throws his out. Richard shares about being bullied all his life and wanting to run away. Reacher can't empathize, but tells him if he wants to live the hobo life, he'll help him. However, he says he can't help until Richard is honest about Beck's business. Richard still hesitates, saying that if anyone learns he talked, they'll come after him. Reacher promises to keep him safe. Richard believes him and tells him that Julius McCabe runs his father's business now and controls every aspect of their lives. McCabe was behind the first kidnapping and cutting off Richard's ear, although Polly was the one who did the cutting. Beck's business was less about importing rugs and more about getting around the regulations. Reacher theorizes McCabe uses Beck's network to ship drugs. Richard isn't sure about what he's shipping. Duffy and Villanueva get surveillance photos of Beck's people unloading the trucks. Polly's overseeing the process. A car arrives and Julius McCabe gets out. Duffy calls Elliot to fill him in on what they've seen. Elliot leaves Cooper alone to talk further. Cooper looks at the sharp point on the chair's back. He deliberately leans back and gouges the back of his head on the point. When Elliot returns, Cooper complains about the pain and convinces Elliot to clean the wound. He tries to connect with Elliot, but the agent is onto him and he sits down to watch TV. Cooper considers the bottle of rubbing alcohol on the table with a thoughtful expression. Reacher and Richard return to Beck's estate and notice the gates sitting open. Polly's not at his post at the gatehouse. Beck and Duke are leaving as they arrive. Richard heads into the house. Duke puts a bag in the trunk. Beck tells Reacher that Angel sent them an address in Hartford. The three of them are going to take care of the would-be kidnappers immediately. Reacher stalls by saying he needs the bathroom. Once inside, he cuts out through the kitchen entrance and retrieves Angel's gun. He meets Beck and Duke out front. Beck promises him a bonus if he does well on this job. On the way out, Beck tells Reacher the ice cream shop owner called and reported what Reacher did to the bullies. Duke comments Richard needs toughening up. Beck is quiet, but Reacher tells Duke no one asked him for his opinion. They arrive at the address in the dark. Beck orders them to kill the entire gang. Duke and Reacher make their way to the safe house. The house looks dark and abandoned, but Reacher talks Duke into believing that's what the gang wants them to think. Duke insists on entering first and breaks in the door. Reacher gets the drop on him, disarming him and demanding to know where Teresa is. Duke tells him McCabe will kill him if he tells Reacher anything. He doesn't believe Reacher will do anything to him. Reacher shoots him in the head. With Beck listening for sounds of a fight from where he's waiting by the car, Reacher unloads all the guns into the walls and hits himself in the face with the pistol butt. Loading the microwave with aerosol cans, he sets the timer for 30 seconds and evacuates. The house explodes in a fireball. Reacher runs back to the car and tells Beck to get in. As they escape, he says that Duke is dead, that it was an ambush. He hands Beck Angel's gun, saying one of the attackers dropped it. Beck identifies it immediately, drawing the conclusion that Angel was a traitor. Reacher implies that the two missing drivers were in on the ambush as well. He says he's earned the bonus. Beck replies that he's been promoted to number 2 as well. Fourth episode opens on the way back to Beck's estate. Beck calls Julius McCabe to tell him about Angel Doll's betrayal and Duke's death. After hanging up, Beck tells Reacher about McCabe. At the cabin, Duffy and Villanueva review the surveillance photos they took of McCabe's operation. A car rolls up outside, and they move to the door, weapons drawn. Reacher comes in. He lets them know things went according to plan in Hartford. Duffy's not happy to hear the DEA safe house got torched. Villanueva isn't pleased that Reacher murdered Duke to take his place. Duffy tells Reacher about the shipment they watched arrive and shows him a picture of McCabe. He identifies McCabe as Quinn and admits that he thought he'd killed him. Villanueva contacts some people and learns that the name Julius McCabe is a dead end. Duffy asks why Reacher wants Quinn dead. Reacher's silent, and Duffy jumps down his throat, demanding he explain himself. Flashback to Reacher's time as a solo military police investigator. General Leon Garber checks in with him on the Gorowski file. He informs Reacher he's assigned Sergeant First Class Dominique Cole to help Reacher with the case, as he's got more work than he can keep up with. Garber floats the idea of what will become the 1/10th. Cole arrives and reports for duty. After telling her to address him only as Reacher, Reacher fills her in on the Gorowski file. It's an espionage case with a weapons specialist, Roland Gorowski, selling top-secret weapons design blueprints. Reacher sees her looking around his office and asks her if something is wrong. She tells him that she asked around about him, and based on his reputation for being demanding yet respectful, she deduces that he only just learned that she'd been assigned to him as there is no second chair in the room. He concedes that her deduction is correct. He hands her the Gorowski file to look over while he gets them coffee. As he pours, he asks her for her thoughts on why Gorowski would sell the blueprints. She immediately states that Gorowski is being coerced. Because Gorowski is in his 40s, has never engaged in risky, illegal behaviors before, and has a family, he doesn't fit the profile of someone doing this of his own volition. Reacher calls out for a second chair to be brought in. Reacher recounts how they staked out Gorowski's dead drop in a park. While they wait, Cole tells Reacher about hunting elk with her dad. Her dad passed 5 years earlier, but she still hunts. Reacher shares a bit about his father. The pickup is taking too long, and they get out of the car to investigate the site. They discover the garbage can they were watching was a misdirect. The real drop happened at another can 30 yards away, and they missed the pickup. Reacher decides to bring in Gorowski for questioning and bluff. Under Cole's questioning, Gorowski admits he gave up the blueprints because they'd stolen his 4-year-old daughter from her preschool to prove they could. From the observation room, Reacher is impressed by Cole's interrogation style. Gorowski refuses to give up a name. He still fears for his family's life. Cole plays hardball, pointing out that the criminals will keep squeezing him for intel until they don't need him anymore, and then they'll kill him and probably his family too. Gorowski whispers the name Xavier Quinn and says he's military intelligence with connections in law enforcement that would inform him if Gorowski told anyone about the situation. In the present day, Duffy points out Quinn used the same method to leverage Beck, kidnapping and coercion. Villanueva asks how Reacher and Cole played it. Flashback to Cole reviewing Quinn's file, including parentage and $500,000 hidden in Aruba. Private Anthony Frasconi brings in phone records and informs them Quinn's been calling Safwan Qasim, a Syrian national with ties to the military. The three of them stake out a club. While they wait, Reacher advises them on what they can and can't do to Qasim to avoid raising Quinn's suspicions. From the back seat, Frasconi comments on how much he likes dancing. Reacher picks up on Frasconi's interest in Cole. As Frasconi makes his pitch, Cole spots Qasim and his security detail leaving the club. They follow them into an alley and tell Qasim they'd like to speak to him. After scaring off the security detail, Reacher convinces Qasim to help bring in Quinn. Cole takes Qasim into custody. Reacher keeps Frasconi back and gives him some advice about keeping safe in a combat situation, as well as how to approach Cole on a personal level. In the cabin, Agent Elliot interrupts Duffy and Reacher to ask if he can let Cooper have a smoke. Duffy reminds him what the regulations say about the treatment of detainees and sends him back to watch their prisoner. Flashback to Reacher and Cole presenting their case to General Masuda. They need Matsuda to get the blueprints authenticated ASAP once Quinn passes them to Qasim. Matsuda agrees and leaves, wishing them luck. Cole suggests she and Reacher go to a bar and get a drink while they review the file. Reacher points out that the optics of that could be problematic. He pulls out 2 beers from his fridge, and they share a drink. Reacher narrates the sting going down. Quinn and Qasim exchanged money for blueprints with Frasconi recording it. Frasconi followed Quinn. Qasim met Reacher and Cole and handed over the blueprints. Back at the office, Cole gets the blueprints authenticated and lists the pieces of the case they've put together to nail Quinn. Reacher tells her it's her win and she deserves to go arrest Quinn. In the cabin, he tells Duffy and Villanueva, there are very few people you meet in life who do everything right. The way they think, attack problems, conduct themselves, how they keep things loose when a joke is needed, or keep their powder dry when things get tight. Dominique Cole cared about doing the right things the right way. She was going to be great. An hour later, Garber brings Reacher a mug and reassures him that Cole's probably en route still. Reacher runs down the timeline, which adds up to 49 minutes. Garber suggests texting her. Reacher points out he doesn't text, and she'll think he's micromanaging her. Nevertheless, he texts her, "All good?" The reply comes, "Got him. Cuffed. Heading in, sir." When Reacher sees the "sir," he knows Quinn's captured Cole. He leads a team to break down Quinn's door. Reacher finds Frasconi dead on the kitchen floor. They find evidence that Quinn took Cole somewhere alive. Back at HQ, Garber gets Quinn's unsealed juvie report with a therapist's diagnosis of malignant narcissistic personality disorder and sociopathology with paranoid and egosyntonic aggression. Reacher realizes Quinn took Cole alive to torture her for the name of her commanding officer. Knowing the depths of Quinn's sadism, the torture will be brutal. Working the facts of the case, they realize he's taken her to his farmhouse in Lytton. Reacher starts driving, telling Garber to call him when they find the address of the property. Garber calls and gives Reacher directions to the property. Reacher says he's about 20 minutes out. Garber's contacted county police, but they're half an hour away. Reacher replies it doesn't matter, as he doesn't plan to arrest Quinn. Garber advises him to do it once and do it right. Reacher arrives at the property. The door to the house is locked, but he hears a sound and notices a light in the barn. The door swings in the wind, creaking, as seen in a previous memory. Wind chimes sound faintly. Reacher enters. Cole's bare feet dangle in the air, blood running down her legs and dripping off her toes. She hangs by bound hands from the rafter. Reacher turns around and leaves the barn, stumbling slightly in grief. He walks past Cole's uniform on a pile on the barn floor. Hearing a sound, Reacher creeps around to a sublevel door. Through the window, he sees Quinn packing money he's digging out of bins of grain. A jingling noise catches Quinn's attention. He walks to the door where Reacher's hung a chain of bells. Stepping outside, he's caught off guard by Reacher, who puts a gun to his head and disarms him. Quinn tells Reacher that he and Cole were working together. He admits to killing her, blaming her for getting greedy. Saying he's okay with serving time for killing her, he tries to cut a deal with Reacher. Reacher asks Quinn what Cole's first name is. Caught in his lie, Quinn moves to attack and Reacher punches him in the face. At gunpoint, he marches Quinn to a cliff top overlooking rough water. He tells Quinn that Cole's first name was Dominique before shooting him in the head. Quinn falls over the cliff's edge into the churning water below. In the cabin, Reacher explains that he used Quinn's .22 to shoot him. Unfortunately, the small round lodged in his skull and didn't kill him. Flashback to Reacher, bringing Cole's body down from the rafter in the barn. He covers her in a blanket before the county police arrive. They find Reacher kneeling next to Cole's body with his hands up. When asked about Quinn's whereabouts, Reacher claims to have no idea where he's gone. In the present day, Villanueva sympathizes with Reacher for his loss and promises they'll get Quinn this time. Duffy seems to be at a loss for words. Reacher asks her what's wrong. She admits that she forced Teresa to go undercover by threatening her with a prison sentence. Duffy feels guilty and needs to make it right. Reacher replies they have that in common. He leaves and returns to Beck's estate with a takeout container of food. In the kitchen, he sits down to eat and asks for a cup of coffee. Agnes asks where Duke is, and he informs her Duke no longer works for Beck. Annette asks if he's okay. He says it's been a long night. She replies that it's been a long night for them as well, preparing for Beck's 50th birthday party. He asks if they know who the guests are. He takes the coffee and leaves, thanking Agnes on the way out. In the morning, Annette knocks on Reacher's bedroom door. He opens it, dressed only in his underwear, surprising her. She hands him a bag of fresh clothes. As he's getting dressed, he hears something and peeks out a window to see Richard working a heavy bag by the carriage house. He joins Richard and tells him to hit him in the chest as hard as he can. With a sigh, he starts giving Richard fighting tips. From the house, Zachary Beck watches them until his phone rings. Out in the yard, Reacher realizes Richard doesn't have the instincts or ability for a fair fight and teaches him to fight dirty. In a car, Villanueva voices his concerns to Duffy about working with Reacher. Using Angel Doll's laptop, they're looking into places where Teresa might be being held. Their first stop is a tubing facility. Duffy picks the lock to get them in. At the Beck estate, Zachary Beck grabs Reacher and tells him McCabe's tracked Angel Doll's laptop to a tubing facility. McCabe's sent 3 guys to retrieve it. Beck gives Reacher the address and orders him to go help kill whoever has the laptop. En route, Reacher tries calling Duffy, but it goes straight to voicemail. He leaves a message. In the facility, Villanueva realizes his phone has no bars. Duffy notes the steel roof is probably blocking the cell signal. McCabe's men arrive, planning to kill anyone they find in the facility. 5th episode opens with Reacher driving to the tubing facility. He calls Agent Elliot at the cabin to find out where Duffy and Villanueva are. He tells Elliot that McCabe has sent men to find Angel Doll's laptop. Duffy and Villanueva aren't answering their phones. Elliot rushes to find the company's phone number. At the facility, McCabe's men make their way through with their guns drawn. Harley spots Duffy near the office door and signals the other 2, Carnes and Rusty, to move on her. The phone rings. It occurs to Duffy that no one should be calling when the facility is closed. Realizing her phone still has no bars, she answers it on a hunch. Elliot immediately tells her to get out and that McCabe's men are coming for them. McCabe's men open fire. Duffy and Villanueva take cover and return fire. Outside, Reacher arrives. Following the sound of gunshots, he runs into Rusty. Rusty silently uses hand signals to establish a plan of attack. Reacher nods assent and then shoots him in the head when he turns his back. Carnes catches sight of Duffy and shoots at her. She drops to the ground and fires a shot into his exposed leg, then rushes to finish him off, leaving her badge on the floor. She spots the Harley and takes aim. Reacher grabs her before she can fire and whispers it'll look suspicious if Reacher is the only survivor again, so they have to leave him alive. Reacher advises that she and Villanueva get away and throw Angel Doll's laptop out the window as they leave. As she heads out, he recons the area and finds her badge. He pockets it, then climbs up the crates to get a high vantage as Duffy and Villanueva run out the door. Harley hears them and tries to follow, but Reacher slows him down by firing the rest of his bullets in his direction, forcing him to seek cover. Duffy and Villanueva peel out of the parking lot, chucking the laptop out the window. Harley runs out of the building, shooting at their car. Reacher drives up in one of Beck's Audis and tells him he's Duke's replacement and to get in. Once he's in, Reacher steers into a mud pit, and the Audi spins its wheels. Reacher tells him he'll have to get out and push. Harley sees the laptop on the ground nearby. Reporting to McCabe, Harley describes Duffy and Villanueva and their weapons. He asserts that they're federal agents. McCabe hangs up on him. Harley tells Reacher that the boss is pissed, and that's never a good thing. Outside a restaurant, Villanueva buys a couple beers, gives one to Duffy, and toasts their survival. Duffy's upset that they didn't find Teresa. She goes off about a case of a missing boy who turned up alive long after everyone had given up. She tells Villanueva he needs to believe like she does or shut up. He nods, cowed by her fervor. Reacher and Harley arrive at Beck's gatehouse. Harley tells Paulie that they have a Neptune Society thing and asks him to help out. Paulie crosses his arms and spits. Harley takes that as a no. Paulie opens the gate that they drive in. Reacher pushes a wheelbarrow carrying Carnes's body down to the shoreline, with Harley following, telling tales of other people they've disposed of this way. Once they reach the water's edge, Reacher slings Carnes over his shoulder. He and Harley walk up to the top opening of a tidal cove, and Reacher throws Carnes into the water to be pulled out to sea by the undertow. Reacher and Harley head back to the carriage house to get Rusty's body for a similar disposal. Harley enjoys watching the body disappear. After Rusty's gone, Harley tells Reacher that Paulie's going to kill him for the prank in the weight room. Reacher calls Duffy from the carriage house. She's driving alone, having dropped Villanueva at the cabin to get his car. The plan is to split up and hit some addresses they remembered from Angel Doll's laptop. One place makes crates, and another sells industrial lubricants. Reacher tells her he has her badge. Outside, Beck calls for Reacher and tells him 2 of McCabe's men, Howitt and Tank, are in his kitchen. Reacher joins them, and Agnes sets a cup of coffee down in front of him. After he takes a sip, she tells him the coffee is made from beans a cat pooped out. While he's processing that information, Howitt makes a sexual remark to Annette, who rebuffs him. When he goes to take it further, Reacher kicks his leg out and smashes his head into the table. Reacher checks to see if Tank feels like taking issue. Tank backs down quickly. In his room, Reacher hides Duffy's badge in his pillowcase. There's a knock at the door. When he opens it, he finds a tray with a slice of pie and a note reading, "Mercy." At the cabin, Cooper begs Agent Elliot for a cigarette. He manages to convince Elliot to let him have that. While Elliot's back is turned, Cooper sucks in a mouthful of rubbing alcohol. When Elliot flicks the lighter, Cooper blows the alcohol in his face, burning and blinding him. Cooper rushes him, knocking him to the ground, and stomps him to death. After unlocking his cuffs, Cooper grabs his coat. Before leaving, he puts a cigarette in his mouth and thanks Elliot's corpse for the smoke. Duffy drives up to the cabin, talking to Villanueva on speakerphone. Noticing the open cabin door, she approaches with caution and finds Elliot's body. She screams her rage. Reacher hears his phone buzz as he's brushing his teeth. Duffy tells him that Elliot's dead and Cooper's gone. Since Cooper doesn't have his phone, Reacher reasons he's heading for Beck's now. Using Elliot's smartwatch to determine time of death, Duffy tells Reacher Cooper escaped 10 minutes ago. Reacher tells her she needs to give him a reason to leave the compound. Reacher calls Villanueva, who is en route to the cabin. He tells him to drive to the blind turn on the way to Beck's house, park the car, and empty it, making it as light as possible. Villanueva wants to know what's going on. Reacher tells him Cooper killed Elliot. Villanueva guns it. Duffy drives up to a power transformer. Pulling her gun, she fires at it until it blows, knocking out power for Beck's compound. Polly comes out of the gatehouse with a flashlight. He finds Beck and Reacher in the house and reports the power's out all over the property. Reacher suggests it's a precursor to an attack. He tells Beck he'll go down the road to stop anyone who tries to make a move on them. Beck calls McCabe to tell him what's happening. McCabe orders him to have the entire house and staff searched. Beck passes this on to Harley, Tank, and Howitt. The three of them rouse and gather the staff and toss their rooms. Out on the road, Villanueva's emptied his car. Reacher arrives. He tells Villanueva to move the car into the middle of the road where they're going to flip it over. After flipping it, Reacher tells Villanueva to get back in the car, so Cooper has to get out of his car to help him. In the house, Harley enters Reacher's room and starts searching it, close up on Duffy's badge, hanging off the side of the bed in the pillowcase. Lying on his back in the flipped car, Villanueva laughs to himself. Reacher asks, "What's so funny?" Villanueva explains he's laughing because he's living the trope of the retiring cop getting killed within sight of retirement. Reacher runs the math that says Cooper will stop before he hits Villanueva's car. Cooper rounds the corner, hits the brakes, and stops before hitting Villanueva. He gets out and approaches the flipped vehicle. Crouching down, he looks at Villanueva lying there with his eyes closed. Villanueva opens his eyes and says, "This is for Elliot," just before Reacher shoots Cooper in the head. Reacher phones Duffy just after she's told Elliot's father his son is dead. Reacher reports that Cooper's dead too. She's spun a story for Mr. Elliot that she'll use to keep the DEA off their backs. Once they've found Teresa, she plans to come clean and face the consequences. Reacher arrives at Beck's and cruises by the unmanned gatehouse. A machine gun dangles from the ceiling, hanging from chains. The main house is strangely quiet when he enters. When he hears voices, he follows the sound to Beck's study, where Beck, Polly, and Harley are waiting. Reacher reports that a drunk hitting a power transformer caused the outage. Beck tells him that McCabe ordered the house searched while Reacher was out. Reacher asks if they found anything, and Beck launches into a speech about how someone in his household is a traitor working with the feds. Reacher reaches for a metal alarm clock behind him, expecting to be attacked at any minute. Beck opens his desk drawer and pulls out a tiny phone similar to Reacher's. It was found in Annette's room. She'd been texting intel to the ATF every 2 weeks. Reacher offers to interrogate Annette for them. Harley informs him she's already dead. Polly killed her. Reacher gets in his face and punches him in the gut to zero effect. Polly swings a fist, connecting with Reacher's face and sending him to the ground. Polly walks out. Richard steps into the doorway and sees Reacher struggling to get up from the hit. Harley talks Reacher's ear off on the way out to the carriage house to collect Annette's body. As Reacher lifts her into the wheelbarrow, Harley complains loudly that he'd planned to spend the weekend on his boat, the Sweet Marie, but now he'll have to pick up the slack left by Angel Doll's absence instead. Reacher punches him in the stomach hard enough to make him vomit, which shuts him up. Richard checks in on Reacher in his room. He tells him he knows Reacher and Harley dumped Annette's body in the ocean. Reacher admits he has to do what he's told, or he'll be the next body to go. Richard accuses him of being afraid of Polly. Reacher replies that he isn't afraid, but hasn't solved Polly yet. Reacher calls Duffy to tell her about Annette being ATF. That means Beck and McCabe are running guns, not drugs. The pieces fall into place. The full-time mechanic, the industrial lubricant supplier. Beck met with an international drug runner because his organization needs untraceable firearms. McCabe Quinn's big sale is coming up. His client could be any one of many criminal enterprises. In the morning, Beck finds Reacher sitting on his bed, having not slept at all. McCabe has summoned them to the warehouse. Beck's concerned that he still has Annette's blood on his hands and suggests he clean up first. Duffy and Villanueva come out of Dinky's Joe and Go with coffees and takeout bags. Reacher calls Duffy to tell her about being summoned to the warehouse. She concludes he'll be meeting Quinn McCabe. She advises him to keep the phone on in his pocket so she and Villanueva can provide backup. They go back and forth a bit. Reacher tells Duffy that Teresa's already dead. Duffy doesn't respond to that. He tells her he'll leave his phone on and heads out. On the way to the warehouse, Reacher and Beck discuss how this meeting might go. Duffy and Villanueva are in place, watching the warehouse before they get there. They enter the warehouse where crates of weapons are being opened and checked. Beck asks Reacher if he's ready to meet the boss. Reacher reaches for the gun in his waistband. "Yes," he says, "I've been waiting for this moment for some time now." Sixth episode opens as Reacher and Beck stand in McCabe's warehouse, surrounded by men inspecting and packing weapons. Carrying a gun in the back of his waistband, Reacher also has a phone in his pocket left on, so Duffy and Villanueva can hear everything going on at the meeting. McCabe arrives and berates Beck for hiring an ATF agent to clean his house. He threatens to kill him before he can take the whole operation down with him, but admits that the buyers know Beck and expect to be dealing with him. Outside, a car rolls up and Duffy notices the man who gets out is carrying a green dress in a garment bag from Atelier Dressmaker. She crows that it must be for Teresa, so Teresa must still be alive. McCabe strides over to Reacher, commenting that hiring him was the only smart thing Beck's done in weeks. He asks for Reacher's name and shows no recognition when Reacher tells him. Instead, he offers a hand and introduces himself as Julius McCabe. The man with the dress bag walks by. Reacher realizes what that means. He shakes McCabe's hand. McCabe notices his attention to the dress and comments that the dress is nothing compared to what he's putting it in. Reacher fishes for more information on the girl. McCabe shares she'd be fish food, except that she's a redhead, and the client has a thing for redheads. Outside, a motorcade arrives. They honk loudly. McCabe tells Reacher to stand behind him and look scary. He orders the others in the warehouse to stand ready, but warns them not to pull a weapon unless they see him do it first. McCabe leads his entourage outside to where Taktarov sits in his car, finishing a call on his phone. He tells Taktarov that the bag Harley's placing in the trunk is only interest, no principal. Taktarov reminds him that wasn't the agreement. McCabe apologizes, explaining the sale was delayed. Taktarov expresses a Russian proverb, which McCabe translates to, "Give a man a fingernail, he'll take the forearm." Taktarov and his cars leave. McCabe tells Reacher to get Beck out of his sight. Walking back to the warehouse, McCabe tells Harley to reach out to his contact in Arlington and trace anyone who has been looking into him. Driving back to Beck's house, Beck explains to Reacher that McCabe borrowed his seed capital from the Russian mob. Reacher establishes that McCabe's life depends on paying back Taktarov's people on time. Duffy and Villanueva find the Atelier Aveline dressmaker and ask about the green dress they saw at the warehouse. He tells them he was hired to make a sexy dress for a redhead. He doesn't have a name for the client, but gives Duffy and Villanueva the contact phone number. Parking the car in Beck's carriage house, Reacher sees Richard heading down to the water's edge. After sending a message via his cell phone, he follows and convinces Richard to come into town with him for some epoxy to fix the toy gun he bought his dad for his birthday on Saturday. Reluctantly, Richard agrees. Dropping Richard off at the shops, Reacher says he's going to get a coffee. In an alley, he meets up with Duffy to return her badge. She shares that they got a number from the dressmaker. There was no answer, but Villanueva has a contact with the cell provider. They're hoping to get the call log on that number. Reacher tells Duffy about Taktarov and McCabe's debt to the Russian mob. Duffy thanks him for not killing McCabe Quinn when he had the chance. When he explains his reasoning, she kisses him. He kisses her back. Suddenly, she pushes him away, stating emphatically, "That is not happening twice." Reacher's understandably confused. Villanueva arrives, explaining loudly he had to move the car. Reacher's surprised to see him and tells Duffy to get Villanueva out of there now. She doesn't understand the issue until Richard walks into the alley and recognizes Villanueva as the cop Reacher killed during the staged kidnapping. Driving back to Beck's, Richard demands to know the truth. Reacher pulls over and yanks him out of the car. Holding Richard still so he'll listen, Reacher apologizes for the lies, but tells him about being recruited to find Teresa. He also tells Richard about his plans to kill McCabe. In the kitchen, Agnes brings in a couple of tuxedos for Richard and Reacher. Beck thanks her and asks her to look in Annette's old room for the list of RSVP'd guests. Richard and Reacher come in after she heads up. Beck sees that something's bothering Richard. Richard claims it was the town bullies again, but says Reacher dealt with it. As Reacher is about to leave, Beck accuses him of trying to be Richard's father. Reacher claims he's just looking out for the kid, the same way he does for Beck. It's his job. Beck points out that people in that job catch a lot of bullets. In Rock Creek, Virginia, an elderly neighbor knocks on Warrant Officer Powell's door, asking if his water pressure is okay. Powell opens the door to find the neighbor being held at gunpoint by two of McCabe's goons. They kill the old man and turn on Powell. One of them calls McCabe to tell them they've captured Powell and that the team in Chicago will make their move soon. In Chicago, Illinois, in Neagley's office, she gets up to make a hot drink in the kitchen, leaving her sidearm at her desk in a holster. In the elevator on the way up, two men attach silencers to their weapons. The elevator dings when they arrive. Neagley hears it and gets cautious. The men check her office first. The microwave beeps, alerting them that she's in the kitchen. She ambushes the one that comes to the kitchen, knocking him to the ground. She gets under some desks and logs into a computer to send a print job to the photocopier. The noise draws both men to the copier room. She takes the opportunity to run to her office. They pursue, shooting at her. Somehow, they both miss her completely, taking out the glass wall of her office instead. She gets her gun and does not miss the guy running in front. Grabbing her phone and a fresh clip, she tracks the surviving assassin to the kitchen. In Rock Creek, the goons are beating on Powell with McCabe watching on video chat. He realizes Powell's never going to talk and orders his men to gut Powell and let him bleed out. In Chicago, Neagley finds the other guy sitting on the floor in the kitchen, holding a gut wound. Looks like she didn't miss him either. He asks her to call 911. She scoffs and makes herself a bowl of cereal. When he asks again for a doctor, she says if he gives up the name of whoever hired him, she might call for some help. He tells her they were sent by Kostopoulos because she was looking into Angel Doll and Polly. Neagley calls Reacher to tell him what just went down. Realizing McCabe tracking down anyone, Reacher used to look into his dealings. He hangs up on Neagley. In the kitchen, Neagley calls an ambulance for the guy. She informs them the ambulance will be there in 5 minutes, but he'll be dead in 1. She finishes her cereal. At the 110th Investigators, Wade answers Reacher's call. Learning that Powell's half an hour late to relieve her, Reacher tells her to send 3 armed personnel to check his house. Beck's in Richard's studio, looking at a painting when he spots a fast-moving car drive onto his property. McCabe, Polly, and a few others march into the house. Beck meets them in the foyer, where McCabe tells him that 2 military members from the 110th Special Investigators have been checking into them. Beck admits that Reacher was 1/10. McCabe orders Polly to go kill Reacher. Polly finds Reacher's room empty. Sticking his head out the window, he sees Reacher running across the lawn. In the carriage house, Reacher grabs the plow keys and shoots the tires on all the other vehicles. As Polly and Harley approach, Reacher bursts out through a garage door in a snowplow. He barrels past them and manages to evade the machine gun fire from the gatehouse. In their hotel room, Duffy and Villanueva discuss the case. Reacher calls to tell Duffy to come get him because his ride's shot out. He doesn't have time to explain fully because McCabe's men are pursuing on ATVs. Running into the woods, he picks off one of the ATV riders and then shoots out the lights on the other 2 ATVs. Using mud as camouflage, he sneaks up on one guy and breaks his neck. The next guy gets stabbed in the neck. The last guy gets garroted using the retracting cable on one of the ATVs. Emerging from the woods, Reacher finds himself on the edge of town. He goes to a laundromat and offers a wad of cash to the elderly Asian owners if they close early. In the woods, Polly finds the bodies of his guys. He walks into town the same as Reacher, but looking around, he has no idea where Reacher's gone. Swearing, he heads back to home base. In the laundromat, Reacher waits for his clothes to wash, wrapped in a single inadequate blue towel. The owners return with a wet face cloth for him to clean his face and a cup of coffee. He thanks them and tells them the coffee is much better than the cat butt stuff. In the kitchen, Polly comes in and whispers in McCabe's ear. McCabe tells him to bring Richard down over Beck's protests. McCabe pulls out a revolver and empties the chambers. He places the empty revolver in front of Richard and 1 bullet on the table. When Beck protests, Polly threatens to shoot Richard in the head. Richard points the revolver at him, but McCabe points out he's got a 20% chance of killing him, and Polly's going to kill his dad immediately and then shoot him. With a look at his dad, Richard puts the gun to his head and pulls the trigger. McCabe orders him to pull it again. Richard pulls it. Beck begs, offering McCabe anything if he'll stop. McCabe tells Beck he wants a matching set, meaning ears. In the hotel room, Reacher debriefs with Villanueva and Duffy. Villanueva's phone company contact comes through and gives them a number from Port Rome. Reacher realizes it's Harley's number and Teresa's being held on his boat, the Sweet Marie. Duffy and Reacher swim to the Sweet Marie. Below decks, they find evidence that Teresa was there, tied up and drugged. Outside, Harley steers a motorboat to the Sweet Marie. Noticing the water on the deck, he gets his weapon out. As he comes below, Duffy grabs his weapon, directing the shot into a lantern that sets the cabin on fire. He tries to run. She and Reacher follow. On the deck, Duffy beats Harley up while Reacher keeps feeding flammable fluids into the fire below. Harley refuses to tell Duffy anything, so Reacher spears Harley's foot with a fish gaff hook. Realizing the boat's about to blow, Harley tells them McCabe's changed everything, moving Teresa, switching the time and location of the weapons sale. Satisfied he's told them the truth, Reacher and Duffy take the motorboat and leave him to blow up with the boat. Back in the marina, Reacher and Duffy change out of their wetsuits. Reacher accuses Duffy of sneaking peeks at his naked body. She gets mad and asks him what they're supposed to do now that their last lead literally blew up. He tells her to pack her sunscreen. They're going to LA. 7th episode begins in Boston. Duffy drives Reacher to meet Teresa's grandmother, Mrs. Daniel. After breakfast chowder and insightful observations by Mrs. Daniel, they go to the airport with a renewed determination to find Teresa for her grandmother's sake. In Chicago, Neagley ambushes a man in his bathrobe when he's getting his morning newspaper. He's Kostopoulos, the man who sent the killers after her at her office. He gives up Julius McCabe as the one who ordered the hit. When she names Xavier Quinn, Kostopoulos blanches visibly and comments that there are very few people left alive who know that name. Kostopoulos explains he used to be Quinn's fixer when he was set up in Chicago 5 years earlier. Quinn took over a family-run export business, but killed them all when they wouldn't bow to his demands. From Chicago, he moved on to Bazaar. Kostopoulos theorizes that if Quinn's hiring hits, he's cleaning up before moving again, and he'll take care of the Becks too. Neagley punches him out before leaving. In an LA motel room, Duffy and Reacher review the inadmissible footage of drug kingpin Darien Prado. All his competitors are dead, thanks to Beck and Quinn's weapons. She tells Reacher that she and Elliot tailed Prado for a few days and discovered he has a very established routine. Reacher sees something on the video and has Duffy enhance the image. He points it out to her, but she doesn't understand what it means. Reacher insists it means they've got Prado. He makes a phone call to a contact who is willing to help them out. Duffy's excited to bust Prado finally, commenting that every con gets a face like her ex did when she showed him a screenshot of her cousin Rhonda's messages with him. She asks how this will help their situation in Maine. Reacher says that if it all works out, their odds of success go up to 25%. She asks if that's for taking down Quinn or saving Teresa. Reacher assures her that having met Mrs. Daniel and knowing how Duffy works, he won't put Teresa's rescue at a lower priority than Quinn's demise. He goes on to extol Duffy's qualities. She tears her shirt off and starts kissing him, saying that her previous protestations no longer apply because she knows who he really is now. They fall into bed together. Reacher and Duffy find Prado at a poolside club and convince him to go for a ride with them. They take him to his gallery. Prado insists the gallery is a legit business. Reacher cites 18 U.S. Code Section 3559C, also called the Federal Three Strikes Law. It states that if someone commits 3 serious violent felonies, they get a mandatory life sentence. Since Prado's got 2 strikes already, they just need to prove he's got a third. In the surveillance video, Reacher noticed Prado parking in a handicapped spot after hanging a handicapped placard on the rearview mirror. He and Duffy tracked down the doctor who wrote up his certification for the placard. Threatening the doctor with physical violence if he didn't document Prado's severe knee arthritis is considered extortion. Extortion counts as a violent felony, and that's 3 strikes. Prado insists he never threatened the doctor. Reacher admits that's what the doctor said too, but after being threatened with having his medical license revoked, he'll say anything they tell him to say. Prado realizes they're the ones committing extortion. Reacher says he just needs to do them a favor, and they'll leave. Prado calls Beck and demands a shipment of weapons. He tells him he'll send a man up from Baltimore with the payment. Hanging up, he tells Reacher and Duffy to get out. Duffy places a call, and a large DEA force enters. While Reacher and Duffy won't pursue the fraudulent parking pass business, the DEA accountants plan to scrutinize the gallery's books. Prado realizes he's hooped, and Duffy cheers as she points out his cousin Rhonda face to Reacher. Back in Portland, Maine, Reacher and Duffy reconnect with Villanueva. They stake out the exchange site Beck usually meets Prado at. When Beck arrives, he has a large bandage over his right ear. Neagley steps out of the other car, playing Prado's man from Baltimore. When Beck approaches her, she tells him to act like they're making a gun deal for the driver guard in his vehicle. She informs him that Reacher sent her and that if he doesn't play along, he and Richard are as good as dead. She asks him for the time and place of the big buy so they can take care of Quinn before he kills them. He tells her that Quinn's changed the plan and won't share it with him. He's been told to focus on his birthday party, which Quinn won't let him cancel. Neagley decides he's of no use and starts to leave. Beck stops her and insists they get him and Richard out. She points out he needs to help them help him. Beck shares that the buyers are flying in that day from Yemen to a private airfield. She hands him a slip of paper and gets in the car. Before she leaves, he makes it clear that Richard has had nothing to do with the crimes he's committed. She assures him that Reacher knows and that Richard has nothing to worry about. Quinn drives up to an abandoned warehouse. Teresa's captive in the basement. He tosses her some food and a bottle of water, telling her that people are looking for her. As he prepared drugs to inject into her, he tells her that if she wasn't worth something to his buyers, he would have used her himself, chopped her up, and thrown her into the riptide hole. She listens to this without expression or reaction. She tries to resist when he comes close to inject her. Still silent, she looks defeated as he forces the needle into her arm. In a motel room, Duffy hands out lunch to Reacher, Neagley, and Villanueva. They discuss the implications of the Yemeni's buyers. Reacher concludes the weapons are for a terrorist strike on U.S. soil. Duffy plans to call around and find out what private flights are coming in from Yemen. Neagley indicates she wants to talk to Reacher in the other room. In the adjoining motel room, she asks how Quinn survived. Reacher explains. She points out this isn't like Margrave or New York, that Quinn's men are trained for deadly force with a stockpile of insane weaponry. Reacher asks if it's making her reconsider. She says she's stating it for the record so he knows she knows the risks. When she tells him about tracking down Kostopoulos, he realizes that she'd already known he was in Portland when he called her to be part of their sting. Knowing that Reacher has feelings for Duffy, Neagley advises he have Duffy sit out the final firefight. He tells her there's no way Duffy will let that happen, and Villanueva will be right by her side. Richard's fixing the toy gun in his studio when Beck walks in and startles him. He tries to hide what he's doing, but Beck's worried he has a real gun and might do something stupid. Beck lifts the cloth and finds the toy. Richard explains it'll take a day for the epoxy to set. Beck is stunned. He tells Richard how he used to play with his toy gun as a child. They talk about how Richard changed after his mother died, and Beck admits he was purposefully cold and cruel. Believing that way, Richard wouldn't mind losing another parent. Beck apologizes for his mistakes and promises he'll never let McCabe or his goons hurt Richard again. He tells Richard he loves the toy gun, and putting it down, he hugs his son. At the airfield, Neagley watches the Yemenis get off their plane and into hired cars. Reacher checks in by phone. She confirms the buyers have arrived and are moving. McCabe sits at Beck's desk in his office, drinking scotch. Beck comes in to report the storehouse is ready for the buy. McCabe orders him to go count inventory as the trucks are being loaded. Beck asks where the trucks need to go once they're loaded. McCabe tells him the buy is going down at the salvage yard at 9 o'clock. He expects Beck to leave his birthday party to make the sale. There'll be time for cake with Richard afterward. Beck says Richard's going to go out to the movies during the party, but McCabe grabs him by the one good ear he has left and makes it clear that Richard stays in the house until the buy is completed. He wonders why Beck wants Richard out of the house so badly and accuses Beck of trying to screw him over. Beck relents and agrees that Richard will stay in the house. Neagley tails the Yemeni's entourage to their accommodations and checks in with Reacher. He tells her to stay on them so they can close in on both sides of this weapons deal. Beck calls just then and tells Reacher the buy is happening at 9 at the Bullhead salvage yard. Duffy and Villanueva come in and tell Reacher they want to bring in the ATF for the buy at the salvage yard since there will be a lot of guns, and they'll be outnumbered. Reacher's reluctant because the ATF will try to keep him from taking down Quinn. He doesn't want Quinn to face justice. He wants vengeance. Duffy is firm on this decision. She's sitting down with the ATF. If Reacher doesn't like it, she says, he shouldn't come. Reacher leaves to get coffee. At the ATF offices, Supervisor Doug Sears is incensed that Duffy took so long to inform them their agent is dead. He takes the intel and determines that ATF will send a team. Duffy argues that they lost an agent too, and her CI is still in danger. Sears agrees they can be on site, but only in the surveillance van. Reacher interjects and advises Sears that ATF needs to send people to Beck's party to round up McCabe's other men. Sears asks why Reacher's in the room. Reacher describes the agreement he made to take down Quinn. Sears tells Reacher to observe the op from the van with Duffy and Villanueva. Reacher refuses and leaves. Before walking out, Sears points out that he's obligated to call the DEA to tell them about Duffy's conduct. Villanueva tries to take the blame, but Duffy doesn't let him. Villanueva and Duffy clear out the motel room while Reacher naps. While Villanueva's packing the car, Duffy and Reacher discuss the situation. Reacher states he wants his cousin Rhonda moment. She understands, but her priority is rescuing Teresa. At the storehouse, Beck leaves instructions with the foreman to finish loading the trucks. He'll meet them at the salvage yard since he needs to get dressed for his party. At the house, preparations are in full swing. Beck helps Richard with his bow tie. He tells him he's stepping out for a minute and that he needs Richard to lock himself in his room at 9 o'clock. McCabe interrupts their hug to tell Beck to get going. At the salvage yard, the ATF forces are in place. The trucks roll in, followed by Beck's car. In the surveillance van, Reacher can't take it anymore and busts out, saying he needs air. Duffy follows and finds him assembling a sniper rifle. They argue, but she backs down and returns to the van. Reacher sets up and calls Neagley to let her know to go dark the second everything's over. He sees the second vehicle drive up and tells her the buyers have arrived. She tells him she's still following the buyers. They're still on the move. She describes the road she's on, and Reacher realizes the deal's going down at Beck's house. The salvage yard is a trap for Beck. 8th episode begins as Reacher realizes the salvage yard meeting is a trap. Reacher hangs up on Neagley to focus on what's going down. In the yard, ATF agents wait for the alleged buyers to get out of their vehicle. Beck stands out in the open, confused by the delay. From his vantage above the yard, Reacher sees Quinn's men approaching from the edges of the salvage yard through the sight of his sniper rifle. He takes out 2 before the rest open fire on the ATF agents. Beck gets into his car. Duffy and Villanueva grab bulletproof vests and drive the surveillance van into the firefight. Reacher picks off 2 more before heading down into the yard. He kills 1 man with his pistol before headbutting another, taking his rifle and shooting him with it. Duffy and Villanueva park the van in the middle of the yard and take positions behind it. Duffy spots Reacher grabbing a new weapon off another dead man. She and Villanueva move out to engage. Reacher shoots another goon. In the chaos, Beck tries to make a run for it. McCabe's warehouse foreman spots him and follows, while Reacher wins a quick draw with another one of his men elsewhere. Just as the foreman is about to execute Beck, Reacher shoots him in the head. Beck, Reacher, Duffy, and Villanueva huddle up and share what they know. Reacher says the deal's going down at Beck's house. Beck tells Duffy that Teresa arrived there before the party, zombie-like. They hear a cell phone ping. Reacher finds one of McCabe's guys texting for backup, puts a gun to his head, and directs him to delete that message. He dictates a new one to send to McCabe. All good, heading back now. At Beck's house, McCabe joins the party. The Yemeni buyers arrive out front and walk up to the house. Neagley's out beyond the tree line, scouting the security. She spots Polly in the guardhouse. Reacher calls and reports that everyone's dead at the salvage yard, except him, Duffy, Villanueva, Beck, and McCabe's guy with the phone. The new plan is to drive the trucks right into the compound themselves. They pick up Neagley on the way. McCabe's man is driving the first truck. Villanueva is trying his best to keep up in the second. At the party, McCabe greets the Yemeni guests and shows their boss, Nasser, a picture of an unconscious Teresa. He offers her as a goodwill gift to make up for the shipping delays. Nasser insists they'll enjoy the food, drinks, and women first. Then they'll make the buy. McCabe acquiesces and hands him the key to Teresa's room. Outside, Polly waves the trucks into the compound. Once parked, Reacher looks for rope to tie up the driver. Polly comes towards them, telling them they need to park on the other side of the carriage house. Duffy calls across to Reacher to tell him to get the driver to say they'll move the trucks. Reacher says it's too late for that. The driver's dead because Reacher couldn't find any rope. Reacher tells the others to find Teresa and Richard. He'll deal with Polly. Beck leads the group to the basement so they can sneak in. Polly opens the driver's side door, and the dead driver falls out. Reacher grabs Polly from behind with a belt around the neck. They fight. Duffy climbs in through a basement window so she can let the others in through a door. Neagley borrows clothes from Beck and Villanueva so she can pass as part of the catering staff. Beck tells Duffy that Teresa is probably in the East Wing and gives Villanueva directions on how to get to Richard's room. While Polly and Reacher continue to beat on each other, Neagley blends in at the party as a server, looking for Quinn. The fight moves into the carriage house, where they both end up buried under a pile of fertilizer bags. Up on the third floor, one of McCabe's men spots Villanueva as he's coming out of the bathroom. They fight. Down below, Richard hears some of the ruckus in his room. Polly digs his way out of the pile of bags and uncovers an unconscious Reacher. He grabs a length of chain and wraps it around Reacher's neck. Reacher wakes up as Polly starts to pull him by his neck to the rafters. Satisfied, Polly leaves him there, kicking and choking. After Polly leaves, Reacher manages to climb up the length of chain and brace his feet against the rafter. He pulls the pulley out of the rafter. We assume he falls to the ground. Outside, Polly hears the crash and turns around to see Reacher emerge from the carriage house, carrying a garden rake. In the third-floor bathroom, Villanueva wins his fight by utilizing a plugged-in electric shaver and a toilet tank lid. Having knocked the guy out, he's catching his breath when Richard peeks in. He tells Richard he's there to rescue him. Polly and Reacher's fight moves on to the back lawn. They tumble over the ridge and towards the water's edge. They fall into the riptide hole. Reacher tries to climb out, but Polly surfaces and drags him back into the water. They fight in the water. Reacher finally throat punches Polly and leaves him to sink to the bottom. Duffy searches the East Wing bedrooms. At the party, Neagley spots Quinn but gets busted by the head caterer. She pulls him aside and tells him she's been hired to find out who has been stealing from the company. She enlists him to watch for any suspicious activity. Returning to the party, she notices that Quinn is gone. Reacher heads back to the house by way of the road. Behind him, Polly emerges from the forest. The slow, lumbering, painful, limping chase is on. Reacher gets to the gatehouse with its suspended machine gun first. Polly's right behind him. They fight. Finally, Polly has control of the machine gun, aiming it at Reacher. He gloats, telling Reacher he's bigger and stronger than Reacher. He pulls the trigger, and the machine gun backfires. As he dies choking on his own blood, Reacher explains how he's smarter. He plugged the machine gun's barrel with a bullet from the belt. Duffy finally finds Teresa. She's so drugged, Duffy can't get her to stand up. Downstairs, McCabe interrupts the Yemeni second-in-command Walid to insist they conclude business as he has another appointment to keep. He asks where Nasser is. Walid says Nasser's gone upstairs to enjoy his gift. Duffy hears someone coming. Nasser arrives with a bodyguard and tells him to stay at the door to make sure they're not disturbed. He comes in and sees only Teresa sitting on the bed. Duffy waits until his pants are down before coming in with her weapon drawn. Having changed into clean, dry clothes, Reacher finds the weapons and cracks open the crates. As he arms himself with a pump-action shotgun, McCabe's man, Rusty, brings Walid and a second man to the building. Reacher takes Rusty and Walid out with the shotgun. Reacher shoots the last man through the door. Inside the house, both Neagley and Duffy hear the shots go off. Nasser calls for his bodyguard. Duffy shoots Nasser in the crotch. When the bodyguard rushes in, she shoots him too. Nasser's still moaning. Duffy shoots him in the head. She gets Teresa on her feet and helps her out of the room. Reacher crosses the lawn to the house and enters through the kitchen. He takes out two of McCabe's men on the way up to the party. The remaining Yemeni group members go looking for Walid. McCabe intercepts them, shoots them, and takes the satchel of cash. The partygoers scatter, screaming, as McCabe's men and the Yemeni buyers exchange fire. In the basement, Beck hears the gunshots and rushes out to find Richard. In another corridor, Villanueva tells Richard to run. Richard runs right into McCabe, who takes him hostage. Forcing him into Beck's study, he's grabbing more weapons from the display cases when Beck arrives, pointing the toy gun Richard gave him at McCabe. McCabe puts down his weapon, believing the toy gun is real. Beck calls Richard to his side. Unfortunately, the barrel of the gun falls apart as Beck's holding it. McCabe realizes it's a toy and grabs a gun. Beck pushes Richard down before catching all the bullets. Richard finds an automatic weapon and fires it, scaring McCabe out the door. Richard rushes to his father's side just as he dies. Neagley comes in and finds Richard with a dead Beck and a satchel full of money. Quinn McCabe's running through the hall. Reacher finds him, but one of the Yemeni men is still shooting at them. Reacher takes him out while Quinn McCabe escapes. He runs out the front door of the house just as the Russians arrive in their motorcade. Taktarov gets out of his car, demanding that McCabe hand over his money. When McCabe doesn't have it, Taktarov orders his men to take him. Reacher interrupts, stating that McCabe is his. Taktarov points out that Reacher is outgunned and all alone. Villanueva and Duffy appear. Neagley comes out of the house carrying the money and offers to buy McCabe. Taktarov threatens to take both. Neagley drops the satchel and pulls the pin from a grenade. She warns him that if he won't make a deal, he'll get neither. Taktarov decides the money's more important. The Russians take the money and leave McCabe Quinn with Reacher and his team. Villanueva goes in to help Richard. Duffy goes to call Teresa an ambulance, pointing out that it'll take a while for them to arrive, so Reacher's got some time. Neagley turns to Reacher and tells him to do what he's got to do. She heads back into the house. Quinn immediately tries to make a deal with Reacher. Reacher finally believes that Quinn's amnesia was real, but tells him it doesn't matter because all that matters is her name was Dominique. Quinn's expression changes as he remembers the last time Reacher said those words to him. It's his cousin Rhonda moment. Reacher knows Quinn remembers now. He shoots him. By morning, Richard looks out the window at the gatehouse and wall. Reacher asks if he's going to tear it all down. Richard says he doesn't know what he wants to do. Reacher tosses a set of keys to Richard and tells him to grab all the cash in the house. Here's his chance to drive off and find his freedom. Reacher passes Villanueva as he's heading out of the house. They wish each other well. Outside, he runs into Duffy, who informs him she's parting ways with the DEA. She's made sure he and Neagley are in the clear. As a final parting, she lets him know she's not into relationships, so although they've had fun, she's moving on. Neagley's waiting at her car with breakfast and coffee. Reacher tells her that Duffy gave him the speech he usually gives. Neagley's amused. She lets him know she's figured out why he does what he does. It's because he hates the bullies who think they can get away with stuff. So he makes sure they don't. Duffy and Villanueva box Agent Elliott's badge and DEA ID and deliver it to his family. Reacher finds a motorcycle in Beck's storage building. Richard empties Beck's safe of cash and packs the toy gun. Villanueva arrives home with a bouquet. Before he can get his key in the lock, his wife Maureen opens the door with a smile. At the compound, Reacher sees Richard packing the car. Richard waves goodbye. Reacher nods. Richard drives away, a wide smile spreading across his face. In Boston, Duffy brings Teresa home. In Maine, Reacher rides off on the motorcycle.